Well, welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. Earlier, I made a video on lo mein noodles, homemade lo mein noodles. And while they were not as thin as I would like, they were mighty tasty. So I had to make some beef lo mein. And I'm going to share that with you. Here are the ingredients. Please pause and write them down. And hey, while you're paused, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you click the little bell in the top right of your screen, you'll get a notice when I post new videos about twice a week. Now let's get cooking. So this dish has quite a few ingredients. You want to start with some pretty good beef. And I have here close to a pound. It said 12 ounces in the recipe, but you can go just however much you have. I have some soy sauce here, and I have some sesame oil, and then I have some oyster sauce. In a later video, I'll go over how to make some of these Asian sauces, but now I've just bought them. This is bean sprouts. I didn't have fresh, so I got canned. I have here some Napa cabbage. You can use bok choy. And I have leeks. Generally, you'd use spring onions. And I've got back here just a little bit of red cabbage. We're going to use a little sugar, some salt, and some red pepper flakes. You can use black pepper. Red pepper flakes are really better in this. We're going to start by cutting up the beef, and I'll trim away any little fat or silver skin areas. You want to slice this pretty thin, and you can also chunk it up smaller than I do if you like. I kind of like the pieces. It's like biting into a piece of steak. But you do want to slice it thin because it doesn't cook very long, and you want to make sure it gets done. And I'm going to peel away or cut away, as the case may be, this little membrane on the side because it'll be a little chewy. And we're going to cook this beef until it's really, really tender. Then we're going to make a little marinade. And I'll just add it right here in this bowl. And you can make this marinade up to 8 hours ahead of time. So first I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of reduced sodium soy sauce. And I'm going to add a little salt later. And that would be just way too much sodium. So if you use full sodium soy sauce, leave the salt out. A tablespoonful of oyster sauce. You know, I love oyster sauce. And it's really hard to get out of the bottle. About got it. Keep on. Got it. There we go. If I had planned ahead, I would have put the oyster sauce in a squeeze bottle, and I might do that later. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of salt. About a 1/4 teaspoonful total, just a little bit. We do have the soy sauce. And then I'm going to add pepper. I like red pepper. You can use black pepper. Usually in Chinese food, they use white pepper. You use whichever pepper you want. I like just a little bit of bite that you get from the red pepper flakes. Then I'm going to add about a tablespoonful of sugar. And if you've watched my videos for long, you know that I rarely use sugar. I'm not sure how Splenda would substitute in this, so I'm using sugar. Then we want to mix that up well. And in my attempt to learn to cook Chinese food in an authentic way, I'm trying to use chopsticks. But, you know, I'm probably going to revert to my regular tools. All these years of cooking with regular tools, new things can be hard. So when I've got this all mixed up, I'm going to just set it aside. If you wanted to do it 2 hours ahead or more, you'd want to cover and refrigerate it. I've got the Napa cabbage here, and I've washed about 4 leaves of it. And we're only going to use this white part. And I'm going to slice it fairly thin in strips and then chop them up. And you can use, you can use bok choy. I really love bok choy. If I could have found it, I would have gotten it. And you can just use regular cabbage if you want to. The thing about the vegetables in beef lo mein is that you really have a lot of leeway. There are a lot of different things you can use that you can add in. I have here a leek. I'm going to use 1 leek. If I were using green onions, I would use 3 or 4. The leek is pretty big and pretty stiff. Let me get a better cut on that. So I'm separating the white part from the green part. I'm going to use them both, but I'm going to use them separately. And I'm going to slice this in little slivers and probably cut them in half too, because that's pretty long. But I cut it in half and then I laid it on the flat side to cut. And as it comes apart, you'll see I'm just going to make it into slivers. And you know, if you're using green onions, you could cut it in the little circles if you want to. I'd cut it on the bias. A lot of this is entirely up to you. And if I'd had green onions, I would have used them to show it to you. But, you know, around here in the wintertime, sometimes it's hard to get green onions, even in the big box stores. And it's easier to get leeks in the winter. Now, with leeks, to slice up the green part, you want to pull them apart and wash them, because I've never gotten leeks where I didn't find some dirt in there. So I take them apart and then wash them really good. And I'll cut the bad part off the end, the rough looking part. It's probably not bad, but it's not pretty. So I'm running these under some good water, some cold water. Get them clean, and then I'm going to cut the rough looking part off the end. And then I'm going to slice these in round little slivers. And these are used as a garnish, and some of them can go into your beef lo mein, but mostly I'm using these as the garnish. So if you're using green onions, you want to cut them probably on the bias and then just set them aside. And see how pretty those are? They'll look really good sprinkled over the top when we're done. And then I have here just a little chunk of the red cabbage, which is totally optional, but it surely is pretty. You can use regular cabbage. You can leave it out and use more of the Napa cabbage, but I just think this gives it a really pretty color. So you want to cut it as thinly as you can, like that. And when I get done with this, I'm going to meet you at the stove. So I have a 10-inch cast iron skillet here, and I'm just going to sprinkle some sesame oil around. You know, you could use peanut oil. You can actually use any vegetable oil you want. I would not use olive oil. It breaks down under the high heat. But you want to use something kind of neutral. And if you'll see over here, I've got water on to cook the lo mein noodles, because none of this takes very long, and I want to have my water boiling. And I've put this on a medium-high heat. If you were using a wok, you would have it on heat high enough that it starts smoking. You don't actually have to do that, and I'd rather not. So I'm just going to put it on a nice medium-high heat. Because of my sound system, you can't hear it sizzle, but you'll see it sizzle. You want to have a good sizzle when you put it in. And I'm going to add it in a little slowly so we don't take our temperature down too much. There you go. I'll separate it out. We want to get a nice brown on this meat. We don't have to get it totally done right now, because it's going to cook more in a bit. But I'm going to watch it pretty closely and turn it over and over to get it brown. And I'll probably cook it for a total of about 2 minutes, turning it several times. I'm going to get a fork here. Can't do this with chopsticks. And check this. I'm going to cut into it and make sure that it will cut with a fork. And when it will cut with a fork, I'm going to take it out. And see, I told you I was going to revert to my old tools. I'm going to put it right back into the same bowl. And any of the juices that drain off into this bowl will go right back in for all the flavor. Because we have the oyster sauce and the soy sauce and even a little bit of the sugar. And I showed you an onion at the beginning, but I didn't show me cutting it up. Well, I cut it up. You can see I cut it into strips. By the way, that's called a French cut of an onion. And I've showed you how to do it in earlier videos. And I'm going to put it right into the juice that was left in the pan. A little bit of oil, a little bit of the seasonings. And I'll add a little sesame oil in here to make sure it has enough to brown. Now, I'm going to cook these onions not long enough to caramelize, but to get a little brown. I'll need just a little more oil. And I add the oil fairly sparingly as I go along. If you'll notice in the ingredients, I wasn't able to tell you how much because a lot depends on how much they soak up as you cook them. So I'm going to cook these, get a little brown on them. I still want them to have just a little bit of crunch. And I still have my heat at medium-high, by the way. That's why you see a lot of steam. When they get to this stage, I'm going to add the rest of these veggies that I chopped up. The red cabbage, the Napa cabbage, the leek. And I'll let those cook a little bit. Stir them around, get them mixed up. May need a little more oil. When those start to wilt just a little bit, I'm going to add bean sprouts. I'm using canned bean sprouts. This is a 15-ounce can, and I'm going to use about half. And, you know, all of this is to your taste, but the proportions I'm giving you will work for you. And then if you like something different, more or less, feel free to change. This is freeform. Time for a little more sesame oil. And you know, if you've never tried sesame oil and you're using peanut oil or something else, at least once try some sesame oil. It's a little expensive, but you use it sparingly. And oh, it brings such a lovely flavor. I'm pretty sure it's part of the reason I love takeout Chinese so much. So here I'm stirring it around. I'm not salting it, by the way. I'm going to add some soy sauce here in just a minute. And I'll taste it for salt after that. Because I just don't want to get it too salty. So you see we're wilting down. Everything is wilted down. Got a little brown on it. And I'm going to add the noodles. Now I have the video for making these lo mein noodles already posted. And I'll put a link in the info section. When you watch it, you'll see these are a little thicker than I wanted. But they're cooked just right. And they taste just right. So I'm not going to sweat the details. And now we'll add the rest of the seasonings. You know, I said in the ingredient list how much seasoning to use, and I divided it into two, part in the meat and part in at this stage. We'll taste it. If it needs more seasonings, we'll add them. But this is a starting point. So that was the soy sauce. I'm going to stir it around really well. And the noodles will soak that up. And when I get that all stirred in, I'll add the oyster sauce. And I'm not going to fight with the tablespoon. I'm just going to glug some of it in. It's in a little glass bottle. I can't squeeze it. I'll just put it in till it looks right. And as it gets hot, it'll get thinner and really spread out well. That looks about right. And then we're going to add the meat back in. And you know, this will really all go into a 10-inch skillet. It's kind of close. I tend to do that. If you want to do it in a 12-inch skillet, that'll be fine. If you have a wok, that'll be fine. Or a Dutch oven. Now that the sauces are all in, I'm going to give it a taste for salt. You can add some more salt if you need it, or you can add some more soy sauce Either one would work just fine. This is just perfect. If I had used full sodium soy sauce, I think it would be too salty. I'm going to plate this up now and show you what we got. So I've got it all plated up here and spread out, and I put a little bit of my chopped leeks, sliced leeks on top. And I think it looks pretty good. And, you know, I do know how to eat with chopsticks, but I can't figure out how to do it around the camera. So I'm going to get a fork and dig in, because, you know, a fork always works. And I want to get a little bit of everything in it. And, oh, it's so yummy. You know, it's as good as takeout. And it took a little bit longer, especially making these noodles. But it really is good. Even the 4-year-old ate it. To her, it was just a new kind of spaghetti. So try this for your family. I hope you do. I hope you like it. Thank you for joining us on Debbie's Back Porch. I hope to see you again tomorrow.